how did I get the name Triple P? I was a player. Yes, I was a player, a true player from the Himalayas. I was a player back in the day. Before I was a prophet and a priest, and then also I was a pimp. I apologize. I didn't. I wasn't a pimp right away. I was a player before I was a prophet and a priest, and then I became a pickup artist over some time before I became a prophet and priest, and then much later I evolved into becoming a pimp before I was a prophet and a priest. So those of you who may know me know that I have a history. Back in the day, I would preach, and I would teach. I would talk about real spiritual subjects, big topics, have debates about the Bible and this and that. But at the same breath, I would just start to talk about bitches and hoes. And so, with that being said, yes, I had before I was somewhat fascinated with game. I I going way back in time. I remember uh, this was many years ago. Many years ago, again, I always had a knack, I guess, for attracting women, if I may say. I always didn't have this bad and all this. This is something that this is evolution, but I always didn't look like this. I mean, I was at some point I was fly to the sky. You know what I'm saying? Uh, but I always had a knack for attracting women to some degree. So, but I later down in life I moved to America, and then I came exposed to these other subjects such as pickup artists and then game and so forth and so forth. And I remember many years ago, uh, this was way before YouTube even, all the topics that all the people on YouTube that talk about game and all that these days. This was way back then. I remember, uh, again, being so fascinated with the ability to attract women. I remember, I think it was maybe $300, maybe 300, $400. I assume. I can't remember the exact price. I purchased a video series from David D'Angelo. It was back in the day when we had DVD players, and it was like it's a series how to be a man. I think that's exactly what the subject, the video title was, how to become a man, and it probably had like 12 CDs inside the pack. But anyhow, the moral story is I cherished that, and as time went on, uh, practiced everything I knew, and then at that time, many years ago, there was something called the pickup artist community, the pickup artists, and then I became intrigued with that, and then I studied to become a pickup artist for some time, and I was extremely successful. At least I think most guys today would say that it's foolishness. I mean, I don't do it anymore, but I would say that I was successful because and yes, it is a numbers game. It is a numbers game, but it has to do a lot to do with psychology, hot and cold and all of this stuff. But again, I've retired from the game for the most part. Uh, but I studied to be a pickup artist for some time. This was way back in the day when we were talking about, the mystery method and type thing. If for those of you guys who might know what I'm talking about, sorry, my tongue's getting tied up. The mystery method, uh, and that's way back in the day. For those of you who may not be aware of what I'm talking about. So, but anyhow, uh, but I was good at it. So I would practice, and I would go and I would practice game, and I would practice these new skills. And I had a pretty good success rate. I would assume, because I already, like I said, was naturally uh, able to do it without any skills. But as time went on, I became so fascinated and so uh, enamored about this whole game thing. I started to hang out with a friend of mine, uh, and I remember starting to watch videos. I started to watch videos on. I have evolved now. I started to evolve, and there was a friend of mine who told me that because I was again successful with sleeping with. Yes, sorry, take that back. I was successful at that too. And then for those of you who may not know, go and see video part two. That's going to be I'm talking about some body count numbers in that video, so go and see that. And there's actually a calculation formula that I use to calculate my body count numbers. So which is, I think you need like a scientific calculator and some other equipment, chat GPT, and the sun and the moon and the three supercomputers, and you calculate all these different algorithms, and then you might get a number. But anyhow, back to what I was saying. So I was already successful uh, attracting and getting women. So a friend of mine, he said that he was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You getting all these girls and you get these girls and you're not benefiting anything. You're just sleeping with these girls, and he's like, you need to get something on the deal, what I'm saying? And I was like, man, I'm getting something on the deal right now. I'm getting sex, what I'm saying? And, he showed me some stuff. He's like, man, and this was way back in the day now. So I don't want anybody to bash me about this because, these accomplishments was huge back then. You know, uh, back in the day, we didn't have the cell phone plans that we have today, whereas things are so cheap. Back in the day was, paying X amount of dollars, X amount of money for minute per minute, and all that. So having a cell phone back then was extremely costly. So this guy was like, he convinced me. It's like, look at this girl is paying his phone bill for me, and all of this and all of that, and how he gets this money and all that, and he was the one who kind of, I mean, I thought he was extremely attractive, a guy, and he could pull it off, So I said, man, hey, man, I think I could do it too, you know what I'm saying? Because girls like me too, so I could do it, But again, this was many, many, many years ago before I retired from the game. But anyhow, so he was the one who convinced me to basically he introduced me to the gigolo game, if I may say, what I'm saying? Because again, and then so I basically utilize all my skills and all my pickup artistry skills and so forth. And then at that time, I decided to see if I could evolve and maybe get something out the deal, And then and lo and behold, I got a girl to pay a cell phone bill, and I had a phone bill that was paid for like a few years, and I didn't pay one bill. That may seem like a small thing, but the list went on and on and on, and I acquired more and I acquired more, and then I would say I would evolve from gigolo to market, if I may say, what I mean, because it was all about the mouthpiece, and so. But anyhow, I was fascinated. I was extremely fascinated with pimping. So at that time, we all know some of the big major names. I don't really want to say any names at this time, but I was I was enamored about pimping, so I watched every video I can, everything. I don't know. There was not a pimp that I didn't study. I didn't, like they say, there's a saying, pimping, it can't be on you. It got to be in you. You know what I'm saying? So it was something, whatever it was in me. I just had this thing for women. I don't know what it was, but I had it in me. What I mean? It was instilled in me. So, but anyhow, so I studied all this pimping, so I felt it. I felt in my heart, I was like, oh man, I pimping. I didn't really know exactly what it entailed and how serious it was. I really didn't understand at the time. But the moral of the story is, I know I was evolving. I was getting more women. I was getting more attraction, and then at the same time, I was starting to get some perks of the deal. I was getting a little, this, a little that, little financial assistance, a little, like some pimps say, what I'm saying, you think I'm handsome, you got to pay my ransom type of thing, what I'm saying, but anyhow, so I was getting a lot of perks from this gigolo marking thing, but I still was not really, I was not classified to be, let's say, a pimp, because lo and behold, I mean, I had the spirit of a pimp, but, I didn't have any hoes, and we all know you can't be a pimp without a hoe, but at the time, I really didn't know that. I just felt like I was a pimp, I said I had all the attributes and everything else, and I had the spirit of a pimp, what I'm saying, the heart of a pimp, the heart of a lion, and all that, but like I said, but at the same time, I still was, talking some spirit, my spirituality and all that. So that's where, I still had the spiritual aspects to me, but I did not have a hope at the time. And then much later down the line, again I evolved, and I was inside. I think I was in again many 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 moons ago, and I was hanging out at an after party, and I was with, shout out to my boy Rascal. You know what I'm saying? If you're still alive, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Spend some time. You know what I'm saying? But anyhow, I was with Rascal. He took me to this after party. You know what I'm saying? And when I went to this party, I mean, every player that I could think of in the world was there. That who was somebody was there, and I didn't know anything about any. I didn't know anybody, but I just knew I felt like I was in the big leagues now because now I have evolved to hanging out with a different breed of people. So as time went on, we went to the party. Sorry, as the night went on, hanging out at this party. Raspu introduced me to I think it was what the guy name was. The guy was his name was uh, what's the name of the guy? G Outer Cast. Yes. Bradley Outer Cast. That was his name. So he introduced me to Bradley Outer Cast, and that was the first time when I really knew that I had arrived. Because for those of us who don't know, that we don't attract what we want, we attract who we are. So, like I was saying, I see fishing rods. Yeah, like I was saying, we don't attract who we want, we don't attract who we are, we attract who we are. And so he introduced me to the video. Sorry. Yeah, so he was the one who introduced me to uh, Jada, Outer Cast, yeah, Bradley, yes, Bradley Outer Cast. I'm getting sidetracked because I'm getting some distraction. I have a few people entering the video at this time. So, but anyhow, I was introduced to Bradley Outer Cast, and I did not know at the time he was Bradley Outer Cast, was the gentleman from American Pimp. And then when I found out that it was the original Bradley out, I don't know if he even could remember me, but I knew for a fact then I was officially supposed to be in the game. And when I met this guy, you know, it was like I met the Pope because I have already watched the American Pimp, and I've studied the pimp game, and my mouthpiece was strong, my attire was on point. List goes on and on. I had little jewels at the time, and I was feeling myself at the time. But again, like I said, it was meeting this guy, and when I saw him, and when I met an official pimp in the flesh, it was not what I expected per se, because he was a totally different guy from the video. From the video, I didn't, he had this very, 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 very. Shout out to you, Bradley. I'm not sure if you could remember me, but I don't know if you remember Boss Rascal. Way back in the day, we met at a party. But anyhow, that's here nor there. But the moral of the story is he had this lady with him, and she was so sophisticated and so uh, glamorous, if I may say. And I did not expect, because usually when, I did not expect that to be. I did not expect. Didn't expect the lady to look the way she did look. And I spoke to her and everything, and I would assume at the time, she looked like she was his bottom at the time. I assumed that because they really looked, there was it looked like something close. But anyway, the moral of the story is, I spoke to her for some time, and and it was Saturday, and at the after party early in the morning, and she told me that she was going to go to church in the morning. I was, what? I'm saying she's going to church. So I was blown away at that, to see that she was talking about church and all that. So, but at the same time, that shows you can't really judge a book by its cover. So, but anyhow, moving right along. So, and I still, again, I didn't have officially have a hoe. And for those, many guys might not know the difference between a bitch and a hoe, but that's a whole different topic, for another day. Because this video again is just an introduction to who I am, how I got the title, how I got the name Triple P. So after some time, I moved, and after meeting Bradley Outakis, I adopted the name YP. YP, which actually means young pimp. So I adopted the name Young Pimp, and I mean, you couldn't tell me nothing. You know what I'm saying? You couldn't tell me I didn't win the Pimp of the Year award. I didn't win, I didn't get the Back of the Year award. I just knew I was a bona fide pimp, and I just felt it in my heart, my soul, And again, like I said, I didn't look anything like this. I didn't have all this is something that came about sometime after. This is basically an evolution of what I became after I retired, with all the knowledge and wisdom and spirituality, and this is the outcome. So, but anyhow, moving right along, so I moved on. Then I adopted the name YP, but I still didn't have any hoe. I was just basically, doing what I do best, small things, you know what I'm saying? But it was one time then I went to this club. I went to a club, and this lady, I didn't know again, because I knew about choosing, choosing signals. That's what we call choosing signals today. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't know anything about, you know, uh, choosing fees or anything. That's a whole different deal. But anyhow, this lady, because I'm in the club just looking to be chosen by just regular civilians. I wasn't actually trying to get a hoe at the time. I just was looking fly and feeling myself and all that, sitting in the corner, just waiting for these signals and waiting for these ladies to approach. But lo and behold, I got this choosing signal, you know what I'm saying? It was a big choose too. It was a huge, huge choose. And at the time, I was just thinking like it's gonna be like a sexual thing. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna, smash this and that's gonna be that. I didn't think I was gonna be any pimping or nothing. I didn't really know. But lo and behold, this was an official hoe. A real official hoe shows up on me and I didn't even know. It's funny as hell because I prepared for years for this pimp game. I spent all my time studying the pimping this, pimping that, pimp, hooray, and the hoe showed up, and I wasn't prepared for what uh for the pimping. That was funny as hell. But anyhow, so the lady she came up to me, she started to chop it up, and basically one thing led to another. But I think she was skeptical, see, because I really looked the part. I did look the part. I did look like pimping, I mean, I sound like pimping, but I think she was uncertain if she should uh, reveal, what was going on. So when I mean, she let this out, but I noticed uh, she was extremely generous, I mean, because she came up with these tools and fees and, was trying to offer me some money and all that. And I was like, man, this sounds like this. I wasn't sure. I said, maybe I'm getting chosen right now. Maybe this is some real pimping hoe, because I know, there's chosen fee. I heard about the chosen fee and all that, but, I never got chosen before, so I don't really know, you know what I'm saying? But again, they told me YP Young Pimp. I don't know, but I never heard a hoe, you know what I'm saying? So, and so some money was, she was trying to solicit me some cash, and then she was asking me, she needed someplace to stay and all of this, and I got her a hotel and all that, and uh, and as time went on, I got some more information about this and that and this and that, and I was like, whoa, this girl is a hoe. You know what I'm saying? But she didn't even know that I was not necessarily a qualified PI at the time. I just, like I said, I looked the part, I talked the part, but I really didn't know what I was doing. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes, like I say, you got to be careful what you ask for, because when the opportunity knocks, you have to be ready. You know what I'm saying? And I was partially ready, but, what I'm saying? But that's why you got to stay, what I'm saying, stay fit, what I'm saying, stay ready to go at all times, because you never know. So, but anyhow, so that went on for some time, and after the truth was revealed, and then uh, to cut the story short, after some time, I decided to go in a different direction. But however, that pimping was still in me. So retiring from the pimp game, I moved away. I went back. I moved away from uh, the states because of, again, for those who might not know, if you see part 2, 3, I spoke about having some family issue, family challenge that's pretty much forced me to move back into my homeland. So I moved back home, and then as I was home, I still had the pimping in me strong, because everywhere I go, everyone who know me, everything come out my mouth is pimp, pimp this, pimp that, pimp, hooray. You know what I'm saying? Bitches and hoes. That's all I talk about all day. Again, they call me pimp, prophet, and priest, because I still was spiritual at the time. I still was talking about, religion, and I was talking about God, and I was talking about all these different esoteric deep talks and philosophies and all these big things, you know what I'm saying? But I still talk about pimp. I mean, you couldn't tell me I still, you know what I'm saying? Because again, I was officially, I already had a host. So now, I mean, hey, it was only one, but hey, one is better than none. Like they say, one is too close to none, and none. Oh no, I don't know. My bad. Say, uh, two. My bad. Two is too close to one, and one is too close to none. But I had one, so one is good enough. You know what I'm saying? Some people don't ever get one in their lifetime, so you know what I'm saying. So, with anyhow, with that being said, so I moved back. So I did not even considered even trying to, get back into the pimp game and all of that. You know what I'm saying? Because I was in a different environment and all that. But at the same time, I still kept the pimping alive, and I would talk about, every opportunity I get, I try to teach the young players. I try to lace them on some game, and I try to teach them about some strategies and some maneuvers. Because again, like I said, I still had all the pick-up artist skills. I still had the gigolo skills. I still had everything. It's just I was just in a different environment, and but the environment was not so much as conducive as certain places like the States. We talk about a little small island. It's not a big place. So, and most people don't even know anything about pimping. Or but anyhow, the moral of the story is, so yeah, I would. It was funny because I would preach. You would see me preaching at, talking to, not preach, but I would talk to some guys and I would tell them about, I would be talking about religion, I would be talking about the Bible, and I would be talking about this and all these religious things, and shortly, I mean, but in the same breath, I'll start talking about bitches and hoes, because that's what I do. And up to this very day, there are some people that actually know me. Some people know me. They, up to this very day, some people will come up to me and just call me bitches and hoes, because that's what they call me, bitches and hoes, because that's all I was talking about. Every time I go somewhere, it's about bitches and hoes. Bitches and hoes. So I acquired the name bitches and hoes from some people who know me also. So anyhow, I still stuck with the name YP. So, but as time went on, because also this is an astrology channel, and that's why I added the astrology, because I am an astrologer, and that is what I do. So I started to practice. When I started to study astrology, I started to get into the moon, and then for some strange reason, I started to believe that I could predict numbers, and I was trying to predict what numbers. I was into gambling. I didn't gamble per se, but I thought that I could figure out some type of pattern to let me know what numbers would be falling, and I was trying to do that for some time, practice, to let the guys know. Some of the guys who gamble, who I knew in my neighborhood, I would tell them numbers, what numbers that I think would fall, and they may not fall, they would fall, but at the same time, they felt like, they would call me prophet. They would say, "Oh, he's a prophet." Because one or two times, it was not frequently, but it was frequent enough to say that it was maybe more than luck. So one or two times, a few numbers that I did predict, and it was very difficult to actually predict these numbers, because I was going off the timing of the moon, and when the moon cycles, and all of this different stuff. I was keeping track of when the number fell, when the number came. Again, we talk about gambling here. Let's talk about numbers. And so I would spend a lot of time tracking these numbers and what day they would fall on, the moon cycle and all that. And I was looking to see if there was any pattern. And it took some time. But the moral of the story is, lo and behold, some one or two times the numbers did fall, but I wasn't a gambler, and I didn't want to spend invest any money like that to gamble. So every now and then I would throw a little 2 cents in here, 2 cents in there. And one time I did win. It was not a coincidence, because when I made the calculations, the number came, and it was like three numbers that I picked. All three of the numbers fell or came in that day, and I won three times in a row. And after that, like I said, I got the name as Prophet. So now you have a title, Pimp Prophet now. So obviously, I was doing the priest thing. I was promoting also at the same time as promoting meditation and preaching celibacy, stimulation, the sacred secretion. I was talking about all these, teaching about all these spiritual things at the time. Again, no fap, no fap, semen retention, sacred secretion. Uh, I was always constantly talking about vibrations and frequencies and things of that sort. So anyhow, so as time went on, more time went on, some people would call me prophet, some people would call me priest, and some people would call me pimp, because they know that was associated with the pimping and hoes and the bitches and hoes. And but also, yeah, so as time went on, some would call me pimp, some would call me prophet, some would call me priest. So I just started to I adopted the name for all three. I would say, and I thought it was kind of funny to add all three to this equation, to say someone is a pimp and a prophet and a priest. I think that was extremely funny. So I would say that somewhat to be humorous when I met people or whatever. I would say, yeah, I's a pimp, as a prophet and as a priest. I was being somewhat sarcastic. And anyhow, and that so, but I never, for some strange reason, I never thought of joining the three and turning it into triple P. I don't know why I never thought of it, because I already had the three P's, like I said, pimp, prophet, and priest. But I never thought about triple P. And it was one day, a friend of mine, a deceased friend of mine, rest in peace, uh, he said to me, and they call this guy, anyway, I don't want to say his name, but anyhow, but rest in peace. I was talking with the pimp, prophet, and priest, and he said triple P. And I was like, wow, that's it right there. That's the name right there. So I evolved from YP, Young Pimp, to from Pimp, Prophet, and Priest to Triple P. And that was it right there, and the name stuck. And now that is what I go by, Triple P, because it's basically all three of the threes. Like I said, I'm not pastor, prophet, and priest. So when you watch these videos, yes, you will hear some spiritual talks, and you will hear some spiritual teachings and so forth. And I would talk about ways to about the body, mind, and soul, and all of that. And I may talk about some religious and spiritual topics and teachings and so forth. Yes, but I again, and I didn't say Pope, prophet, and priest, and I did not say piety and prophet and priest. So yes, I will. You will hear some talks about some bitches and some hoes, and you will hear some talk about sex and all that, because now, back to the astrology. So now, as an astrologer, that is where I combined everything. And as we know, so this is what you could expect from this channel, because an astrologer, basically, in astrology, for those of you who don't know, astrology covers a vast topic, a plethora of subjects. Uh, so I will also talk about uh, subjects such as personal identity, self-esteem, self-worth, uh, things of that sort. Just basically your identity, personality, traits, strengths and weaknesses, things of that area. I will talk about finances, uh, and again, personality traits, why you have the personalities you have, why, some of your strengths, some of your weaknesses, and again, finances. Maybe you might be having some financial problems. I'm going to talk about that also. Uh, you might be lucky, you might be extremely lucky with finances. I'll tell you why that is. I will also talk about communication, a lot of communication, communication. How you communicate, communication style, you communicate with others. We talk about the home, family life, uh, issues, family issues. Talk about uh, fun, recreation, uh, romance, dating, sex, things of the sort that deals with relationships. Then I talk about day-to-day life, day-to-day life problems, day-to-day situations, health, uh, just basically work, things of that sort. If you have problems with any of those areas, or you want to know anything about those areas, those are the things that I talk about. And marriages, and then uh, other deep spiritual areas, deep spiritual topics, career, career choices. If you want to know what career did you choose, or what would you mostly be best suitable for, I talk about those things. Uh, uh, Friends, groups, organizations, if it's just basically anything. And then also another reason I got that, and that's when I got into astrology. That is how the prophet came about. Like I said, because of trying to predict the numbers and so forth. So that also as well. Just to add to everything, how I got the name prophet from doing astrology, also trying to predict, and then giving predictions about the future and what could happen, what may not happen, what could happen, and so forth and so on. So hopefully that was a very long video in reference to how I got the name Triple P. But again, for those of you, uh, this video is going to be part one. I did create a part one video, but I decided to delete that video because it didn't have enough information, and that video was also extremely distorted because of the sound. quality issues that I was having at the time. I was at this very same location, but I was having a lot of wind issues, and hopefully I don't have that problem today, because I do have different equipment, and hopefully the noise cancellation equipment that I have today is able to resolve that problem. But like I said, this is part one of the introduction video. There will be three parts: part one, part two, and part three. And part three should be the final video, whereas I'm gonna go in and actually, after part three, then I'm gonna actually start to talk about subjects. I'm gonna help teach you guys about astrology techniques, methods, and everything that I know you guys are gonna know. I do teach classes and all that, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. This video is just basically an introduction about me, just to get you guys to know me a little bit more, how I got the name Triple P. And again, like I said, please like and share and subscribe. And for those of you guys who have stuck around this long and who have watched the video for this long, I really, really, really appreciate it, because this is actually my second YouTube video. This is my actually second video in general. So this is something new, but however, this was meant to be, and this is also a part of the prophecy. So with that being said, for those of you again, once again, who've stuck around this long, thank you, thank you, thank you. I do truly appreciate you guys for sticking around. Please like, share, subscribe, leave comments, and I look forward to hearing from you guys. Really, really interact in the comments and like and subscribe so when these new videos come up. Because again, like I said, this is part one. It's going to be part two and part three. So it's only going to be three videos so far. But hey, you have to start somewhere. You know what I'm saying? So when you subscribe, you'll be notified when new videos will be coming out, which I plan to do at least once a week. At least, you know, I mean, that's the least I could do, uh, once a week. So, and hopefully, I will be able to do more. But for now, once a week is the goal. But again, likes, share, and subscribe. And for those of you, again, who have stuck around this long, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And may the stars shine brightly on you always. And may the planets work in your favor always as well. Triple P. And I'm out. Oh.